Hi folks, it's Shaz here, and I'm going to do another triple stamped card today. It'll be the last of the triple stamped cards I do for a while. I've been making some Christmas cards using the technique, and I have some that I've done in dark green using holly stamps with gold embossed sentiment, and here I've used red acrylic jewels for the holly berries. You don't have to use those, you could colour them with markers, you could use stickles or pearls, so you've got some options there. I've used a different sentiment on each one, and this one I just added a ribbon to the corner because I didn't get a very good print at one point, so that just hides what didn't look very good. I've got some that I've done with mistletoe stamps, but this time I've used half pearls for the mistletoe berries. And then the third one that I've done, which is the one I'm going to do today, are with snowflakes. Again, I've used a different sentiment on each one, and to this one I've added an embellishment that I'll show you how I did as we get to the end. But again, if you wanted to keep it flat, you can just skip the embellishment. So I've got my card base, which is half of an A4 sheet of cardstock cut in half straight down the length and folded. I have two more matting layers because my card base will actually be the third matting layer. Put those to one side because we won't want them for the moment. And then 3 stamping layers. So I'm going to do as I normally do and stick the stamping layers together with some repositional tape. But for the moment I'm not going to put the top one on because I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment on that, and once you start applying heat over the top of the repositional tape it tends to come apart, so I'm just going to stamp that. The stamp I'm using is this one from a Tim Holtz set called Scribbled Woodlands, and the ink is Encore Ultimate Metallic Silver. Now I've had these pads for, it must be around 15 years now, and apart from the occasional re-inking, because there are re-inkers available for them, it's still going really strong. So fabulous pads, definitely worth every penny they were spent on them. As I say, I've re-inked a couple of times and that's it. So the embossing powder is from Stampendous and it's just called Detail Silver. Again, I've had it for absolutely years. So I'm just going to heat emboss this and I'll be back with you in a moment. Okay, so there we have our sentiment. These were a pack of 2, I think possibly from Woodware, and they were only a couple of quid, but they're brilliant if you want to hold on to a small piece of cardstock for heat embossing without burning your fingers. You can use clothes pegs, I've heard people that use those as well, a wooden clothes peg, just to keep your fingers a little bit further away. It's surprising how far the heat from a heat gun actually extends. So now I can put that one on the top and I have my 3 layers. Now the stamps I'm using for this one mainly are from this set, sorry, this set here, which is from Clarity. Comes in an assortment of sizes. I've also got a lot of other individual snowflake stamps dotted about, and a lot of them I've had for so long I have no idea any longer where they came from, so I can't give you go-to, but there's so many stamp sets out there now that have snowflakes with them, they really shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to start by using one of the bigger stamps in the set, and to colour these I'm using VersaFine Deep Lagoon. I'm going to heat emboss them with a sparkly powder afterwards, but I've always found VersaFine is absolutely no problem for heat embossing with, even if it's a few minutes before you get to it. Just one of the many things I like about VersaFine embossing, ink pads. And even the Clairs, if anything, the Clairs give you even more time between heat embossing and stamping now. And of course there are so many colours in them, although it was hard to imagine somebody has actually improved on VersaFine as it was. The black, the Nocturne, is absolutely fantastic. It's so thick and it gives you such a good print. So if you're looking for a good black ink pad, don't look any further than the New Clair Nocturne. It's awesome. Switch to a smaller block because I'm going to a smaller stamp now. Obviously always try and get your stamp over more than one layer, because that is what the illusion of this stamping method relies on, the fact that the design appears to continue beyond the break where the matting layer goes. You won't do it with every single one, of course, but as long as there are enough of them there, then you maintain the illusion. And now, just to fill in a few of the gaps, I'm going to take a small stamp just fill a few spaces like so. Okay, so I think that's the stamping all done for now. And I'm going to put my piece of paper over so that the embossing powder doesn't stick to my paper. And I'm going to use, I think this one, sorry, wrong one, that's a glitter. This one, right, Whirlpool embossing glitter from Wow. The sparkles, which were the one I pulled out first, these are actually meant for using with the sticky embossing powder that they use. It won't stick so well and set to embossing ink, or indeed any ink. It needs the sticky embossing powder underneath it. If you heat emboss on one of these triple stamped cards, make sure you turn it a few times as you tap it off, so that you don't end up with embossing powder sticking to the edges and ruining your design. And be careful where you put the tub of embossing powder so you don't knock it over. put it back on. Right, I'm going to heat emboss this, so again I will be back with you in a few moments. If you see any stray areas that you don't want embossing powder sticking to, and embossing glittery powders, the glittery ones do tend to be a little bit more problematic with sticking to any static to the card than normal powders do, so it's best to give it a once over first. Okay, so here we are back, and as you can see they've all separated because of the heating from the heat gun. So this is where you need to make sure you've got your layers back to the right orientation. And now we can start adding them to our matte layers. And I'm going to use a tape runner pen for this because it's just quicker than me messing about with double-sided tape. Of course, the beauty with things like tape runners is if you don't get it right first time, they'll peel off quite easily. This is one of my crafting best friends. It's a Xyron adhesive eraser, and as you can see there, I've got some of the tape runner on the front of the cardstock and it's got glitter stuck to it. And now I haven't. These are absolutely fantastic if you can get hold of one. They're available on Amazon, so they're absolutely brilliant. And this one goes onto the card base. So make sure you absolutely got this one the right way up when you put it onto your card base, because if you put it on upside down, you're not going to be able to flip the card to make things right. So just make sure it goes in the right orientation. And then we will add the other two parts of the triple stamping. And there we have it. And if you wanted to, you can stop there. That's fine. You don't need to add anything else if you want to keep them flat. These are really, these are really outstanding for if you want to batch make, because then they don't take as long as you would think they do. So it gives you the opportunity to make as many as you want. This pack of wooden snowflake shapes are by Kaiser Craft. I just picked them up from my local craft shop, and we'll go with that one, I think. First thing I do is to get some ink onto it. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do here is poke out a couple of bits of the embellishment that didn't drop out when they made them. Okay, that's got rid of those. and let's get some ink to cover your snowflake. Awesome, that's fine. Now I bought quite a few of these, 3 or 4 of these, when I don't know whether they're still about. But the point is, it's a really cheap pigment embossing ink pad. That said, it works absolutely fine as an embossing ink, but it does mean I can keep ones for. I've got one that has lots of red on it because I've done red coloured hearts and so on. So I don't worry that I'm mucking up a good pad. You can keep re-inking this with embossing ink. If you wanted to, you could do this with an ink dabber. You can get embossing ink in a dabber bottle. Let's say I've got a few of these cheap pads that I bought again a long time ago, and they were cheap. I think they were about £1.50 or £1.99, so they were next to nothing. And now I'm going to sprinkle that one. I'll use a different one this time. Glacier. This is Wow Embossing Powder Glitter Glacier. Sprinkle it with the embossing glitter. Tip off the excess. Now I'm quickly just going to grab my wooden chopping board, which is what I use if I need to emboss on my desk, because these mats and heat do not play nicely together at all. So this is just a cheap chopping board from, you get them in any supermarket, cook shop, whatever, and it's just ideal for this sort of thing. So apply heat to melt your embossing powder. Do remember that these shapes are made from very thin wood like balsa wood, and you don't want to apply too much heat because wood burns. So fast embossing for that. Now I'm going to add another layer of embossing ink to this one. And this time I'm going to put some UTE on it. These little spoons were free with Easter eggs, little Easter eggs, earlier in the year, and again perfect for things like glitter, embossing powder. So we'll heat that one. And again, you don't have to use UTE, and I'm going to sprinkle another layer of glitter onto it while it's still hot, because it will stick into the melted powder, like so. But as I say, you don't have to use UTE. You can use normal clear embossing powder, and you may need to use an extra couple of layers to get a thick coating onto it, but you can do it with just normal embossing powder. And again, we'll give this a blast to heat set it, and that'll do. And let it stand for a moment or two before you handle it, because melted embossing powder is hot. It will burn, it will stick to your fingers, so just let it have literally just a moment, like so, for it to settle, and then you're good to handle it again. And there we are, we're done. So I'm going to place that one up there in that corner, I think. And now we have the battle with the glossy accents, because I've tried all sorts of things for keeping this nozzle unblocked, and I haven't yet found one that's actually reliable. I've even tried storing it upside down and I still get the same problem, but if anybody knows a good way of stopping it. Slightly too much there. But again, that being the case, just use a cotton bud or a toothpick to spread the ink around, the glue around, and onto the front of the card like so. So one thing with glossy accents, it doesn't take it long to set, and it is really strong. It's just really irritating, but I think I will end up decanting that into another bottle. So that's me done. That is my third set of 4 Christmas cards. All of the greetings are different. This one is from, as I say, a set by Tim Holtz, Stampers Anonymous, called Scribbled Woodlands. The Happy Christmas and the Best Wishes at Christmas, they come from a set by Hobby Art, I think called Winter Words, but I'll check that and put it in the blog post. And this one, which is a lovely script, it's a really old stamp. I'm sure it's no longer available. It was a wood-mounted stamp from a company called Dinami. So, as you can see, I actually used a slightly different coloured embossing powder on a couple of them. So, there we have my third set of 4. So, for the sake of what's probably taken me an hour or so, maybe 2 hours, to be generous, I've made myself a dozen similar but all slightly different Christmas cards. So that's me done for now, and I'll be back with you shortly. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll put as many links and measurements and so on into the blog post, and I'll see you again soon.